Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. I'm Dr. Adriana Popescu, and I'm really excited to have as my guest today Amanda Kenderes. She is a professor of interdisciplinary studies at Humphreys University. She holds a PhD in social science and comparative education. I was going to say comparative literature, comparative education from the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies at UCLA. She grew up in North and South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe. Wow, all over the world. And she has a really interesting book called Talk Types: How What We Say Reveals Who We Are. And we're going to be talking about that today. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here. And, we always like to start the show with finding out a little bit more about our guests. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your story, how did you come to be doing this work that you're doing? I'm sure your life's experience of living all over the world may have had an impact. Would love to hear more about that.
Yes, definitely. So for me, like you said, I grew up around the world, and my dad worked for the U.S. Embassy. So every 3 years, we moved to a new continent. And for me, I was, I learned from an early age that if I wanted to connect with people, I would have to do so quickly because we'd be moving on very soon. And so I observed people and how they get to know each other. And what I noticed was it seemed that there were these 3 levels. People would start out with factual, objective talk like weekends coming up or the weather. And then as they got to know each other, they would add some subjective or personal information like, how was your weekend? Did you have fun time? And then as people really got to know each other, I thought, I saw people doing things like talking about the deep stuff, hopes and dreams and goals and all this. Well, I thought, my favorite is the deep talk. So if I've got a short time here, let's just skip the small talk and go straight to the deep stuff. That's how I was as a kid. So I tried it out. I tried deep conversations with my friends on the playground. I mean, this started in elementary school. Didn't go over super well. So I tried it out with adults. I would ask my teachers and bus drivers things like, what's happiness? And how do you know when you found the one, if they were married? That didn't go over very well either. So I thought, well, shoot, if people really aren't interested in diving into this deep talk with me, not my peers, not adults, then what kind of future does that leave for me connection-wise? So I got pretty down for a while. Fast forward about 10 years, I ended up having, incidentally, an argument with my dad that allowed me to come to this realization. And that was that what I had thought were 3 levels of talk weren't actually levels of talk. They were types of talk, categories of talk. And we don't like them all the same. We all have different preferences. We would rank them differently. And when I realized that, and when, we have these 3 categories of talk, we rank them differently. There are only 6 possible rankings of these 3 types of talk, which gives us 6 talk types. And when I realized that, it was a huge relief because I realized there's not one normal kind of talk, and I'm just not it. I'm one of 6 normals, and other people are normal too. We're just different. And it was such a beautiful and mind-blowing realization. I spent the next 20 plus years across 40 countries studying it. And just published the book on it.
Fascinating. It's making me think about the whole like neurodivergent conversation that's been happening so much more lately. And I love that because what it does is it normalizes difference, right?
Oh yeah.
It's okay to have a brain that works differently than someone else's might. It doesn't, one is not superior to the other. And I think what you're saying is there are many different types of communication, and there is no one special way that everybody should be communicating. And I think we, somehow in our world, have that expectation that people should be able to understand what I am communicating. They should be thinking in the same way I am, but they're not. I mean,
Right.
look at the day and age we're living in right now, right? I'm wondering if you could comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's incredibly validating. And from a communication standpoint, a mental health standpoint, a diversity standpoint. Um, and that's ultimately what fueled me. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm a different kind of thinker, but I'm one of six normal kinds of communicators. And that is super empowering. And that was very empowering for me. Um, and in my experience, my talk type is probably the rarest in my experience, but there are still plenty of people out there that have this, that share these preferences. And so when we can kind of engage in life and navigate life with this empowered, validated perspective, I mean, things change for us. Our confidence is boosted. The way that we interact with others, we don't take things personally. We extend grace to others when we might not like what's happening, or how it's being said, something is being said. So it can be very empowering, actually, and it can help us to better navigate decisions and relationships, and everything from the small things on what movie to watch to the big things on who to marry. So yeah, super empowering.
I love that. And I love these more empowered perspectives on things rather than, the pathological approach, which unfortunately traditional psychology tends to emphasize in the sort of Western medicine model, right? Always looking for the problem. But I will say that communication, as a therapist and a coach, the communication between people, relationships are so affected by this topic, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
many of the clients that come to me struggle with communication with their partner, with their boss, with their coworkers, with their kids. And not it almost seems like we're speaking different languages
Yeah.
sometimes. So I see the relevance of this for so many different people, and especially in the spirit of improving communication. Some of the things you said, not taking things personally, or is it maybe learning how to deliver information in a way that your partner, your boss, whatever, if you knew their talk type, you could communicate with them in a different way? It reminds me of the love languages, stuff.
That is very much what it's like, but for talk. um, yeah. And it's not to say that if our love language is one thing and our partners is something else, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean we should break up tomorrow if they're different, but it can help us navigate them. And if we so decide that we want to be with somebody who is aligned with our love language or our talk type, then we have that choice too. But either way, we can make a data informed decision, which is fantastic. I think the more information, the better.
Well, sure. Yeah. Most people this is all subconscious, right? It's not below people's conscious awareness. They don't understand, why am I getting so frustrated trying to talk to this person and they're not getting it? Or why aren't they getting what I'm saying? Or what's wrong with me? A lot of people will turn it on themselves, right? What's wrong with me that
Right.
this person isn't getting it or is saying something to me that I'm not getting, right? People have a tendency to blame themselves. And I see a lot of that. And that can lead to a lot of anxiety. I would think it would fuel like social anxiety. How many people struggle with talking, much less speaking on a stage in front of people, but just talking like one-on-one, the way we're talking right now? For many people, that brings up a full-blown panic attack.
Oh
So
yeah, exactly. So I mean, even just and a lot of times we don't need a complete reworking of our education and re kind of mapping out and rethinking of our history and what. all we need is just one more piece to unlock our kind of understanding and potential. And sometimes one piece is all we need to be able to interact in a way that's empowered and intentional. So for this, people can feel anxiety, they can feel lost, they can, they don't know what to do. But just being able to recognize, okay, maybe my son or daughter has this talk type and I have this one, and this is why we're having communication conflict. Well, that's very grounding, and it gives people a baseline to where both people have a place. That there's not the expectations change when we have that understanding. Expectations are one of the major pitfalls of conflict, or sort of impetuses of conflict. So change our expectations, change our outcomes, change our change the way that things are delivered and experienced.
So how does someone find out what their own or someone else's talk type is?
First thing I would say, get the book. It's got everything in there. It's a good starting point. There is a talk type test that that's been in development, and it should be on the my talk types website soon. But as we all know, any personality test or inventory we take, they can be wrong. And so, use it as a guide, but understand the model, and then, you can tweak. You say, well, actually, I tested as this. I think it's just about right, but maybe my variables are in the number 1 slot and the 2 slot are flip-flopped or whatnot. So I guess the longer answer, the medium answer is so that definitely I would suggest that. But just for sake of conversation, there are 2 ways. This is stuff that's in the book. So if we're trying to figure out our talk type, I liken it to sitting, walking, and running. So we have access to what's inside. The 3 types of talk, communication categories, are reasons for talking. So they get at the why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we talk how we talk? We have access to that if we really kind of think about it. But I don't know why that person's talking until they tell me. So I don't have access to that. That's not observable. So for me, I can think about, okay, of the 3 categories, which one feels like sitting, which is the most relaxing, walking, which is sometimes a delight. On a long plane ride, it's a delight to get up just to go to the lavatory or stretch our legs for a second. But if we had to, on a long plane ride, 8 hours, we'd prefer to sit for 8 hours than walk for 8 hours, and certainly to run for 8 hours. So when we think about it this way, we can kind of order the communication categories according to our preferences. And sometimes it's easier just to eliminate the one we like the least. And then we can just figure out our top, favorite and second favorite. For others, though, we don't have access to the why. We have to look at what's observable. So what's observable? Tone of voice, body language, the words that people use, and the organization or the structure of people's talk. And all of this is in the book. To really understand this, we'd sort of have to have a discussion of what the 3 communication categories are. But yeah, that's how.
So can you share a little bit more with us about that? Yeah. What are the 3?
Great. So if we think back to sort of my story of how I got here, and we think about those 3 levels of conversation, what I thought were levels, actually not levels, but I call them A, B, and C. Category A is factual. It's objective understanding. So anything, so if I'm an A dominant, I want to share my objective understanding. And I want to hear other people's objective understanding. I want to add to my knowledge base, etc. C's, I'll skip to C's for a second, because they're also about understanding. but they're not about objective understanding. They're about subjective understanding. This is the deep talk that I, loved as a kid. This is the, tell me about your childhood and how have you grown over the years? How have I grown over the years? That's my subjective understanding. Nobody else can tell me my understanding. That's my personal understanding. We each have a subjective understanding about who we are, our paradigm about how we see the world, etc. But it's subjective. And then B is, relating. And that's the personal stuff. So people could say, hey, did you do anything fun this weekend? Let me show you pictures of my dog. Let me tell you what happened at work on Friday. Now that one's a little bit misleading because we can say what happened at work in A, B, or C. But if I'm just telling you my subjective experience, it's B. It's just relating. I'm not trying to make a deep statement about it. I just want to be seen, heard, and felt. I just want to witness for what I'm saying. I want somebody to listen, and that's it. And then maybe they'll remember some of the names of my coworkers, or they'll remember some of my favorite things or my idiosyncrasies, and they can play with those with me, and we can have fun that way. But we all have fun in different ways. We all joke in different ways. There are A jokes and B jokes and C jokes, different ways of having fun. Different values map onto these things. It's just incredible. The list goes on and on. So yeah, those would be our three categories. And B's, for example, the relators are going to be how do we tell someone who's a B? They're going to use a lot more dialogue. Just for example, they're going to say, he said, she said, versus the A's and C's are trying to get you not to experience what they experienced, but they want you to understand what happened. So they're going to paraphrase.
So right now, the way we're communicating, would that be more of an A style, would you say?
Yes. Because we're just kind of transmitting information right now.
Yeah. So I can easily see how being of different types could easily create conflict. Like I was thinking about, this is sort of stereotypical, right? But often you'll hear conflict between men and women, let's say in like a romantic partnership, where maybe a woman just wants to be heard. She wants to express how she feels. And maybe that's like a B thing, or she wants to connect with her partner by sharing about like how her day was or whatever's going on, or a problem she's having. It could be B or C, I guess. But then you've got the stereotypical male is very to the point and direct, and okay, let's find a solution to your problem, not, oh, let me mirror back, do some reflective listening and validate how you're feeling and all that. He doesn't maybe know how to do B or C because he's in the A, well, let's just fix the problem so you don't have to worry about it, right? And then she gets upset with him, like, you're not listening to me, or you're trying to fix my problem when I didn't ask you to fix my problem. It's so standard and stereotypical, but it seems like an example of this.
Oh, for sure. So the beauty of this is that it's an example that we can all identify with. We've all heard it. We've all somehow it's reached us, whether it's something we're experiencing ourselves or we've heard about it because it's a stereotype. So that's good. We can see that, yeah, this is something that actually happens. It does. On the other hand, the talk type model actually liberates us from some of these stereotypes, some of these very stereotypes, because historically we've been taught that, yeah, this is how women are and this is how men are. But there are so many examples to the contrary. And, there are many men who are relators, who do B, who are B dominants. But the way that they might do it could be different. They may talk about different topics, but it's still B. They're still sharing their subjective experience. if we were to get really stereotypical, you'd say, okay, well, maybe a woman is talking about her day. Maybe she's talking about, let's get really stereotypical. She went shopping and she went out with her girlfriends for brunch and what, and this is what Sally's doing and that's what Susie's up to. Okay. But the male equivalent is we watch sports and then, um, we went on the deck and grilled some barbecue and we, talked about this and I teased, John about how his, he accidentally broke his lawnmower. It's not a gendered thing actually what we do, and that's so liberating.
Yes, I could see that. Yeah, because I sometimes am much more, I think I'm pretty A dominant. And so I can think of times when I've like been listening to people like, come on, get to the point already. All
Yeah,
right, what are you trying to say here? What are we working towards here? Are we just like fluffing around or what are we doing?
yeah. Yeah. Well, anytime when we say, get to the point, that's an A or a C kind of objective. That's a goal of A or C, because we're trying to get at the understanding. What's the point behind it? What's the understanding that you want me to arrive at? What are you trying to convey?
Right.
But and B is, let me get a witness.
So when I think about, some of the challenges, like even on a more societal or global level, one of the things that I see happening, I think particularly in the US these days, is a version of miscommunication. And tell me if we could use this languaging of talk types to understand it. People are speaking their subjective truth as if it is objective truth, right?
Yes.
And this
Yeah.
often comes around issues around charged issues like politics or religion or your views on this or that topic. And I see so much. I mean, you heard during the pandemic, people's opposing views about like vaccines or COVID or whatever. Like it actually broke relationships up and put major strain or estranged families and all kinds of stuff. Like, how could we understand that in the context of talk types?
Absolutely, we can, but we've got to be honest. And that's, I think, a little bit of a harder quality. It's in shorter supply, I think, these days. Um, because the people who are trying to have subjective their subjective understanding or subjective experience sub in as objective understanding, sub in as facts, um, have to recognize that that's what they're doing. And I don't know, in my experience, many of them are probably not going to be open to that. Now, I hope so. If we can, if we are open to an honest conversation, and sometimes life presents us with hardship, and that pain pushes till vision pulls. So sometimes pain pushes us to a spot where something we weren't willing to think about, do, say, participate in suddenly opens up to us because we have to now. We're not in a position to do it because we want to, but now we have to save our marriage, to get our kids to talk to us or whatever. And sometimes, unfortunately, it has to get to that point. But if it gets to that point, it's a win. Um, and we can use the talk types to say, hey, look, maybe you're a BA and you're a BC. And as a B dominant, you're going to probably be looking through this lens primarily, and you might be operating with more subjectivity just naturally. And let's agree that if we're going to be talking about facts, that we need to make sure that what we're talking about is actually factual.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're of that more A dominant type and you are more focused on the facts, maybe just knowing that someone is coming from a more subjective place, you don't have to allow yourself to get so triggered or riled up to challenge them around, hey, you're not being actually factual. That's just your subjective opinion. I mean, I think I just feel like I've heard these conversations, these arguments and conflicts, you know, because each person is trying to prove that their perspective is the right or correct or truth. It is the ultimate truth. And it's so much more nuanced than that, is what we're learning here.
Yeah, and I would add that absolutely, while we may not get people as often to admit to saying that, hey, this is not a fact, this is an opinion, right? Getting people to separate opinions from facts, that's kind of challenging these days. But if we can, whoever has the information and has the vocabulary, if I have knowledge of the talk type model, then I get to use it to, well, my advantage, because I've got that vocabulary. Vocabulary helps. So even if my partner, my coworker, whoever I'm in relationship with, doesn't have an understanding of the model or doesn't want to, so some people don't like personality models, don't like, to be, they resist the idea of being put in a box, as it were. But even if they don't have, I can still use that, and I can start to reinterpret their behavior in a gentler way based on my own knowledge. So, okay, they're not speaking factually. They're very passionate about this, and it's not looking like anything I say is they're not gonna back down, right? So it's just not worth. It's not loving to myself to try and push that. But instead, maybe what I can do if I know their talk type is to try and think, okay, what's going on underneath, and is it a B thing? Is it a C thing? Um, do they want to be heard? And if so, that means that they don't feel that they have a voice somewhere. Maybe they're not being heard amongst their friend group, or they feel that politically they've lost power over the years, and it scares them. Maybe they don't have C and they're not willing to talk about that, but I can know, and that can help soften my approach to people, even when they don't participate in the resolution.
I think that's really helpful. Yes, because then as an A person, and if I'm who's more objectively focused and I'm encountering a lot of subjectivity, if I recognize that maybe there's just the person wants to be heard, now we're no longer in a political debate. Now we're in oh, you just want to voice your opinion. You want someone to hear you. And I don't have to judge you. I don't have to like try to prove you're right or wrong. I can just let you talk and say, wow, like I get where you're coming from. I wish we had more dialogue like that in this country right now, being so charged, especially in some of these hot topics like that. I see how there's really like a path forward there. So that makes me wonder about, Amanda, what are some of the applications, settings in which people learning talk type or using talk type might be appropriate? Like I think about couples therapy, for example, or maybe the workplace. Like what are some places you've been using or teaching people how to use this system?
Oh yeah, I mean the applications are immense. Um, in any kind of therapy, social work, occupational therapy, so any of the therapies or the social service kind of industries, business, leadership, organizational behavior, any kind of team building, even hiring, job placement, because different people are going to be better suited for certain. So then, career paths, getting this into the hands of young people that are in university or high schools and figuring out where they want to go. It's incredibly bad. Anywhere that we communicate, um, is a potential application for, which is everywhere.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, even the industries like film, where we have rating systems for films. Well, if I'm a BC, I'm going to be attracted to a lot of films that are BC type films and maybe CB type films, because those are in my arena. But so if I go watch an AB film, I'm going to give it a low rating just because it doesn't resonate with me personally, not because it may be a bad film. So, just it goes on and on.
Hmm. Have you noticed? I'm getting ready to travel out of the country in the next couple days, so this is on my mind. Have you noticed like differences across cultures or different backgrounds people may have? So I mean, that could be socioeconomic. It could be race. It could be like where you're from. Like I just am curious. Do you notice differences like that across groups?
Yeah, interestingly, I don't. Okay, I'll say I yes and no. Um, so broadly speaking, the same six talk types are everywhere. There's nothing I found outside of them. The same six can be found in every culture, every country that I've experienced, every age group, demographic. The list goes on. Now, if we think about this more sociologically, cultures change. The sort of the zeitgeist of a like the overarching culture, dominant, pervading culture of a society does change over time. That's why in the United States we're not into. We don't have the Woodstock culture we had in the '60s. We have a different culture now. So, and that changes. So, but if we map out, we could map out those changes culturally by talk type. So looking at if we go back to the fireside chats on the radio, the presidential fireside chats, those are can listen to them. They exist and they're much more AC. Here are the facts with some deep undertones. And that was and look at talk shows from the 50s, game shows. They're very AC as well. Um, Disney movies, Bambi. It's just a lot of here's some animals. They have this is their life, and then Bambi loses its mom. And it's a C moment. So there are a lot of AC. But if you fast forward to say today's Disney movies or today's culture in the United States, there's much more of a pervading BA culture, where people just want to be heard. Not even so much understood. We don't want to understand each other. And if you look at Disney films, and just as a comparison, we have just a lot of kind of funny sound bites in these shows, and this just a lot of experiences, and a lot of with very few C moments. They're BA much of the time. There may be a few C moments thrown in, but then they're quickly somebody makes a joke so that we can hurry up, move on, let's get past that, so that we don't get too serious. So we've kind of lost a little bit right now. Or I think our capacity, not capacity, but our tendency to be comfortable with serious conversations, and to be comfortable with discomfort. So yes, culturally, I think cultures change, and we can see that around the world. And if you go to the Middle East, you'll see there's a lot of C dominant, a lot of CAs and CBs, because right now, I mean, at least the last time I was there, there's a lot of engaging in the meaning making behind the politics or the experiences. Um, we go to some other cultures and it's more A dominant. But that's subject to change, as so it's not fixed. But still, we see the six talk types even amongst under an umbrella of a pervasive or dominant culture.
Fascinating. So, with the idea, you mentioned other kind of personality systems, typology systems, and I think of the Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, and in some of these models, the idea is that you want to kind of develop. You're maybe overly developed in one style or way of communicating or functioning, but you also want to develop the others so that there's more balance. Does your system have a similar kind of idea, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I know with the Enneagram model, the philosophy behind that is very much like this, where the theory is, yes, you have a dominant type, but over time, it's best if you can balance yourself amongst all the types, and then you would be just more of a balanced human. Um, I think with the talk type model, I would say also in my experience, it is something absolutely that we appear to be born with. More, it's more nature than nurture, but environment does make a difference. If we are a C dominant and we grow up in an AB or BA household where we're the only C, and people, when we try to do some deep vulnerable C with others, they're just not having it. Then we can push our C down, and then as adults later in life, when we start realizing, well, hey, I actually do like to talk that deep stuff. We might be a little bit more hesitant or uncomfortable doing it ourselves just because we didn't feel safe for so many years. And then the opposite would be true. So we can kind of build our muscle even if we were completely aligned in our environment, where we had the same talk type with our parents or siblings or what have you. We still have a third category that's our least preferred, that we could build muscle, which will help us to interact with people who have that as a more preferred communication mode.
I think
So yeah,
I can see where that would be advantageous, right? To be
absolutely.
able to, oh, okay, I see you're more of a C person, so I can adjust my way of communicating with you a little bit because I have fluidity with that too. I can go deep, and also I can also keep it to the facts, and I can just be there kind of connecting and listening and all that. I love that. I mean, I think like you said, that is very empowering to the individual, as well as to like society as a whole, right? If people are having less conflict, if they're having healthier communication relationships, what can that do for the world?
Oh my gosh, I mean, the potential is huge. It really, really is. Yeah.
What, yeah, sorry, what, so that makes
No,
me
no.
wonder then, what is your vision for this? Like your book is recently come out, is that right? Yes. So like, what do you see its trajectory like? What could be possible to get this material out there in the world? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I would like it. I would like to see, obviously, people helped, people being able to use it in their own lives. I would like it to be a household vocabulary, not because I made it, but because it's actually useful. So, just like so many businesses will bring in the MBTI, Myers Briggs, um, to their places of business to kind of figure out where employees are best suited and whatnot. And individuals do that too, personally, and then college and career. This would be something that absolutely, I think, ought to be added to that. Um, but I mean, beyond that, I mean, there's so many possibilities, even in AI, and interfacing with uh, AI human communication, being able to integrate the communication models and the language programming for AI to interface better with people. I mean, the, the list is endless, really. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes, and happy to be part of any of it, all of it.
Yeah, so you have written the book, and then you're also going to be doing workshops and things, or are already, and maybe you do some consulting. How do you apply this with your own work?
Yeah. So with businesses, I'll go in and we'll do a ground, like a baseline. Okay, what are people's talk types? What are our communication issues? Let's figure out our conflicts and then see how we can work towards resolution using the talk type model. And then also just so workshops to just, educational ones to get people informed, and then they'll go on and on their own terms, whether personally or professionally, kind of apply them and then come back with questions and do round two. So yeah.
Excellent. So if people want to find out more about your services, the book, your work, where can they go?
Yep. So if the book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They can also go to amandakenderes.com if they want to book any kind of consulting or workshop. And then talktypes.com, where there's more information about each of the talk types, video examples. We're delving into the body language, tone of voice, etc., all of these things, and with examples that we just can't get in a book form. So yeah, that'll be on the website.
Awesome. Awesome. So wonderful. And it gives us so much hope for, especially again, in these tough times, in this day and age of conflict and polarization and miscommunication and all the things. I love the idea that there's, something like this out there that actually can empower people, can help them improve their relationships, their communication. Maybe we'll have a happier world coming out of this. That would be my hope.
I share your hope.
Yeah. Yes. Any
Sure.
final thoughts for us today?
I hope that for others, the same thing that happened to me. I wish for others to be empowered and to have that kind of confidence boosting response that comes with understanding and the ability to just elevate the way that we navigate with our communication, which really is virtually everything that we do. So I wish everyone the best with that, and I'm here to help.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. Please remember, if you have liked the show, subscribe, rate, review, share it. Let's get this information out there in the hands of the people who are searching for it. Thanks again, Amanda. Thanks, everyone. And see you next time on Kaleidoscope of Possibilities.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time.